Welcome to Zion Recap. This is our deep dive into Pastor Roy's latest message, and wow, it was highly convicting.
Oh, for sure. He talked about shaking the dust off, which is a topic I think everybody loves.
Right, it feels like this biblical permission slip to just set some really hard boundaries or even, cut people off.
Exactly. But the core of the message and what Pastor Roy really unpacked from Acts 18 was that most of us are skipping all the fine print.
The terms and conditions.
The terms and conditions.
Hmm.
We want to get to the judgment part without fulfilling the commands that Jesus set first.
Okay, so that's our mission today. We want to cut through those assumptions and really clarify what those critical steps are before we even earn the right to think about moving on.
And before we jump in, we should probably mention something up front.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We want to be really transparent that here at Zion CC, we use AI tools to help us summarize sermons and common questions, and that includes putting this deep dive together.
And we work really hard to keep everything accurate, but, AI can sometimes make mistakes. It can hallucinate, as they say.
So if you ever hear something and need some clarification, or you just have questions, we really, really want to encourage you to join us in person.
Yeah, come to small group. It's Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m., and we would absolutely love to talk through it with you there.
All right, so let's unpack this. We start with the anchor scripture, right? Acts 18, verses 5 and 6.
Right. Paul is in Corinth, and he's testifying to the Jewish community that Jesus is the Messiah.
And it is not going well.
Not at all. They start to violently oppose him, insult him, and that's when Paul does this radical thing. He shakes the dust from his clothes.
And he says, your blood is upon your own heads.
No.
I am innocent from now on. I will go preach to the Gentiles.
Now, that sounds like a guy who's just had enough, like he's frustrated and acting out.
A spiritual tantrum, maybe. But Pastor Roy made it so clear that's not what was happening. Paul was actually operating under divine direction. He was being obedient.
Exactly. And this sets up I think the core truth that Pastor Roy really hammered home, and he quoted Mother Teresa. We are not called to be successful. We are called to be faithful.
That is such a huge distinction, especially when you look at Paul's life. I mean, by any worldly standard, his ministry could look like a disaster sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. He's rejected, thrown in jail, literally stoned, kicked out of towns. Most people would call that a colossal failure.
But the outcome, the results, that's not our responsibility.
That's God's part. Our job, our 100% responsibility is the obedience. It's the faithfulness to the command. Paul just kept testifying.
So lesson number 1 is really about our metric for success. We had to keep proclaiming Jesus regardless of the immediate results we see.
Yeah, you don't just quit the work because you didn't, convert your boss on the first try.
Okay, but now we get to the really tough part.
Yeah.
The part that I think convicted a lot of people, myself included.
The prerequisites.
The prerequisites. Pastor Roy pointed out that if we jump straight to dusting our feet to the judging and the boundary setting, we completely miss the point of our commission.
We do. Because this whole act of shaking the dust off, it was first introduced by Jesus when he was sending out his disciples. And it was the absolute last resort.
Okay, so what are those prerequisites? Let's get into them. The foundation is in Matthew 10, right?
Okay.
Verses 7 and 8.
Yep. Jesus tells his disciples, go and announce that the kingdom of heaven is near.
And it wasn't just an announcement with words. It had to be demonstrated.
Right. The actions come right after. Heal the sick, raise the dead, cure those with leprosy, cast out demons.
And then the big one.
Give as freely as you have received.
Okay, so let's be honest. When you hear that list, heal the sick, raise the dead, that sounds pretty impossible for the average person today.
Of course. And Pastor Roy bridged that gap for us. It's about the spiritual application. It's about demonstrating the kingdom's power before we get to the judgment.
So raising them from the death of their spiritual hopelessness?
Exactly. Have we genuinely tried to speak life into a relationship that is dead in sin? Have we gone out of our way to try and restore spiritual health to a friend who's struggling?
So if I'm ready to dust my feet because a family member is just impossible, I have to stop and ask myself, did I first try to demonstrate God's power to heal and restore them?
Or did I just go in with my judgment script already written? And that mission gets defined even more in Luke chapter 4, verse 18. This is where Jesus quotes Isaiah.
He's defining his own purpose.
He is to bring good news to the poor, proclaim release for captives, sight for the blind, to set the oppressed free. And then, this is so important, to proclaim that the time of the Lord's favor has come.
The Lord's favor, that's key, because if our attitude going into a hard conversation is just frustration and judgment.
That we're not proclaiming favor at all. We're proclaiming condemnation. We're replacing the gospel of hope with our own message of, you're wrong.
So we have to focus on obeying him first, proclaiming freedom, demonstrating healing, speaking favor. All of that comes before we even think about the dust.
Right. It's about showing the kingdom, not just defending our own personal space.
Okay, so if, and that's a huge if, but if we have fulfilled all of those commands, we've poured ourselves out in obedience, and we're still met with, violent opposition.
Then Matthew 10:14 comes into play. If any household or town refuses to welcome you or to listen to your message, shake its dust from your feet as you leave.
And this act, it isn't just passive. It's a proclamation. It's a public sign of judgment.
Complete severance.
So let's talk about what that dust actually symbolizes, because
Okay.
this is where the message gets really practical for our lives today.
For sure. Paul wasn't just, shaking off dirt. He was shaking off things with some serious theological weight. And Pastor Roy gave us at least, 6 meanings?
Yeah, 6 types of dust we need to shake off.
Yeah.
So what's the first one?
Okay, the first is probably the most significant for a lot of people. False teachings.
False teachings.
Yeah, back then, disciples would literally walk behind their rabbi, and they'd get covered in the dust kicked up from his feet. It was a symbol of following his teaching.
So shaking off the dust means rejecting teachings that don't line up with Scripture. Like in Matthew 16, when Jesus says to beware of the yeast, the deceptive teachings of the Pharisees.
Exactly. So what false teachings are you covered in that you need to shake off?
Okay, what's next? This is one I think we all deal with. Offense and persecution.
Oh, this is a big one. Jesus promised it. John 15:18, he says the world hated him first. So if you're going to proclaim the truth, you will be rejected.
And we take that rejection so personally. It becomes this offense we carry around.
And Pastor Roy said we have to shake that off. If you hold on to that feeling of offense, you're still tethered to that rejection. It's spiritual baggage that just weighs you down.
Yeah, if I'm still angry about a Facebook comment from last week, I have not shaken off that dust.
Not at all. And that brings us to the next one, which is similar but distinct. Rage and anger.
Okay, so how is this different from offense?
Rage is often tied to a blocked goal. Think about Acts 22. The crowd literally threw dust in the air in a fit of rage against Paul.
Like road rage. It happens when someone stops you from getting where you want to go.
Exactly. And that anger is spiritual dust that can blind you. God might be trying to reroute you, but all you can feel is the rage because your plan was interrupted. Paul shook it off and shifted his focus to the Gentiles.
Okay, that's powerful. We also need to talk about the dust of grief and loss.
Yeah. Pastor Roy referenced Joshua chapter 7, where they threw dust on their heads in complete dismay and grief.
And grief is real, and it's necessary to process.
Absolutely. But it can become a dust that clouds our vision of God's goodness. It can paralyze us. And Pastor Roy really encouraged anyone struggling with that kind of grief to talk to someone. Don't carry that alone.
That's so important. Then there's the dust of failure.
Oof. This is the dust that clings to us when we've tried something and it just didn't work out. A ministry failed, a business, a relationship.
And it creates this analysis paralysis. We're so attached to the dust of that one mistake that we can't move forward.
It becomes our identity instead of just an event that happened. And God is saying, you need to shake that off so you can take the next step I have for you.
So really, shaking the dust is as much about our own spiritual hygiene as it is about judging someone else.
It's mostly about us. And that leads to the last one, the original Jewish custom, shaking off the dust of Gentile lands to avoid defilement.
We're in the world, but not of the world.
Right. And we have to constantly be shaking off the attitudes, the influences, the defilement that sticks to us just from living in this culture. That dust cannot define our walk with Christ.
So when you look at all of that together, it really reframes the whole concept.
It absolutely does. And it leads to the final critical point. Before we can even think about shaking the dust of others off, we have to be producing fruit.
We have to model that the kingdom is near. If we aren't, why would anyone want what we have?
And Pastor Roy made this so practical. He said, cool story if you prophesy or pray for 5 hours a day.
But are you growing in the fruits of the Spirit?
That's the evidence. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. If you say you're a believer but people see impatience and judgment, you're telling them your faith doesn't actually work.
That goes right back to that C.S. Lewis quote he used.
It does. The world does not so much need to be informed as it needs to be reminded.
Do people see faith and hope when they look at you, or do you have to tell them you're a Christian for them to know?
And that's where the idea of little comes in. He referenced Matthew 13.33, where Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is like a little yeast that permeates the whole dough.
You are where you are for a reason.
On purpose, in your job, in your family. Jesus put you there as the yeast. They just need a little bit of that kingdom from you. But it means we first have to shake the destructive dust off ourselves.
So let's bring this all home. What's the big takeaway? Judgment does come, and sometimes severance is necessary, but our focus has to be on our own continued obedience.
Yeah. When you lose that job, you don't quit working. When a friendship fails, you don't quit having friends. You obey the Lord and you keep preaching the gospel. Even if you have to shift your audience, just like Paul did.
Which is the provocative thought to end on, I think. Paul didn't stop preaching.
He just stopped preaching to them.
So the question for all of us to think about is, what area of your life or ministry needs you to shift your audience, to move on to the Gentiles, instead of just quitting the work entirely?
Where do you need to shift the effort, not stop the obedience?
And if this message really resonated with you and you need to dive deeper, we really do encourage you to join one of our small groups. That's where we can talk about this stuff face to face.
They happen every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. It's the best place to ask those specific questions and get real clarification.
And of course, to catch Pastor Roy's latest message live, you can join us on Sunday at either 9 or 11 a.m.
And if you want to hear this entire powerful message on shaking the dust off from start to finish, just head over to the Zion CC YouTube page. It's up there right now.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into the Word. We'll catch you next time.